"That's the wrong formula," Black Waitress whispered to the billionaire. Just before the $120 million deal. What if one whispered sentence could change everything? The coffee shop buzzed with its usual morning rhythm, steam rising from ceramic cups as downtown professionals hurried through their routines. Behind the polished mahogany table in the corner sat James Fletcher, 42 years old and worth more money than most small countries. His silver hair caught the morning light streaming through tall windows as he reviewed documents that would seal the biggest pharmaceutical deal of his career. $120 million. Enough to cement his legacy and fund his late wife's dream research foundation. But across the narrow aisle, wiping down tables with practiced efficiency, Keisha Washington had been listening. At 35, she'd worked every shift possible at Morrison's Cafe for 3 years, supporting her mother's medical bills and her daughter's college tuition. She'd also spent 4 years in pre-med before life forced other choices. And something about those papers spread before the billionaire made her hands tremble as she clutched her cleaning rag. "Where are you watching from tonight?" James Fletcher hadn't always been the man in expensive suits making deals that moved markets. 25 years ago, he'd been a chemistry student at State University, working nights at a diner to pay for textbooks. Life had taught him that money solved problems, especially after watching his wife Elena battle the rare autoimmune disease that took her 5 years earlier. Her final wish had been simple: use whatever fortune he'd built to help others fighting impossible medical battles. This deal with Meridian Pharmaceuticals would do exactly that, funding a research foundation in Elena's name that could change thousands of lives. The documents spread before him represented 3 years of negotiations. Meridian needed his company's breakthrough protein synthesis technology, and James needed their global distribution network. Together, they'd revolutionize treatment for autoimmune disorders. His lawyers had spent months perfecting every clause, every formula, every projection. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock, just 5 hours away. Board members from both companies would gather in Meridian's glass conference room, cameras would flash, and Elena's dream would finally become reality. Keisha moved through the cafe with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd learned to notice everything while appearing invisible. 3 years of serving coffee to downtown's powerbrokers had taught her to read stress in expensive suits and desperation behind confident handshakes. But something about the man at table 7 felt different. She'd watched him visit Elena's grave every Sunday morning for 2 years, always carrying white roses. She'd served him countless cups of black coffee while he stared at his wife's photograph, shoulders carrying weight that money couldn't lift. This morning felt different. His usual sadness had been replaced by something lighter, almost hopeful. The papers before him weren't the usual financial reports or merger documents she'd glimpsed over other customers' shoulders. These showed chemical formulas, molecular structures, and projected patient outcomes. Medical terminology that most people would skim over, but words that made Keisha's heart race with recognition and growing alarm. She'd left pre-med school 7 years ago when her father's sudden death left her mother drowning in medical bills and her younger brother needing immediate support. 4 years of organic chemistry, biochemistry, and molecular biology had been abandoned for double shifts at the cafe and night work cleaning office buildings. But knowledge didn't disappear just because circumstances forced you to use it differently. The molecular structure displayed in James's documents looked familiar. Too familiar. During her sophomore year, Professor Martinez had used a similar compound as an example of what not to do in pharmaceutical development. The protein synthesis pathway looked promising in initial trials, but long-term studies revealed devastating side effects that didn't appear until months after treatment began. Progressive organ failure, immune system collapse, deaths that came slowly, quietly, months after patients thought they were getting better. Keisha's hands shook as she refilled coffee cups at nearby tables, stealing glances at James's paperwork. She recognized the Meridian logo from news reports about their rushed drug approvals and subsequent lawsuits. If James signed this deal, if this technology reached the market with Elena Fletcher's name attached, thousands of desperate patients would trust a treatment that could kill them. The foundation built to honor a woman's memory would become her husband's greatest nightmare. The clock above the espresso machine read 9:30. 4.5 hours until the signing ceremony. 4.5 hours before a man's love for his late wife would unknowingly betray everything she believed in. Keisha set down her coffee pot and took a deep breath, knowing that some moments require ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Keisha had faced difficult moments before, but never one where speaking up could cost her everything, while staying silent could cost lives. She watched James review the molecular diagrams with the focused intensity of someone who'd built an empire on understanding details others missed. But these weren't financial projections or market analyses. These were chemical formulas that could kill people, and she was possibly the only person in this cafe who recognized the danger. Her mind raced back to Dr. Martinez's biochemistry lecture 7 years ago. The professor had displayed a similar protein synthesis pathway on the overhead projector, his voice heavy with disappointment as he explained how promising research could go tragically wrong. The compound showed incredible initial results in treating autoimmune disorders, but the long-term studies revealed a horrifying pattern. Patients improved dramatically for the first 3 to 6 months, then began experiencing progressive organ dysfunction that couldn't be reversed. 23 people had died in the extended trials before the research was permanently shelved. The molecular structure in James's documents looked nearly identical. Same protein targets, same synthesis pathway, same promising initial phase that masked the deadly consequences hidden in the compound's long-term metabolic effects. If Meridian had somehow acquired rights to this abandoned research and repackaged it without addressing the fundamental flaws, they were preparing to market a beautiful poison. James looked up from his papers and caught her staring. His expression shifted from concentration to gentle concern. "Is everything all right, miss?" His voice carried the same kindness she'd noticed during his Sunday visits to Elena's grave, speaking to the groundskeeper about maintaining the white rose bushes around her headstone. Keisha's heart hammered against her ribs. Here was a man who'd spent 3 years building something meaningful from grief, who visited his wife's grave every week with flowers and whispered conversations about the good they were going to do together. How do you tell someone that their greatest hope might become their greatest horror? How do you explain that your dropped dreams gave you knowledge that could save lives? "I'm sorry," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't help noticing your papers, and I think there might be something you should know." James's eyebrows raised slightly, but his expression remained patient. "I appreciate your concern, but these are rather complex pharmaceutical documents. The signing ceremony is this afternoon, and everything's been thoroughly reviewed by teams of lawyers and scientists." The words stung, not because they were rude, but because they were reasonable. Why should a cafe waitress understand molecular biology? Why should a billionaire listen to someone whose opinion wouldn't matter in any boardroom? But Keisha thought about the 23 patients who'd trusted similar promises of thorough review and careful testing. She thought about Elena Fletcher, whose memory was about to be attached to something that would have broken her heart. "Mr. Fletcher," Keisha said quietly, using his name for the first time. His eyes widened slightly in surprise. "I know this might sound strange, but I used to be pre-med at State University. 4 years of biochemistry before life took me in different directions. That molecular structure you're reviewing, I think I've seen it before. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up." The cafe noise seemed to fade around them as James Fletcher looked at the young woman who'd been serving his coffee for 3 years, seeing her clearly for the first time. The clock above the espresso machine ticked toward 10 o'clock, and somewhere across town, Meridian executives were preparing contracts that could change everything. The question hanging in the air between them was simple. Would love be strong enough to overcome pride, and would wisdom be powerful enough to prevent tragedy? James Fletcher's world suddenly felt unsteady, as if the foundation of his carefully planned future had developed cracks he hadn't noticed. He studied Keisha's face, searching for signs of deception or misguided confidence, but found only genuine concern and something that looked like fear. Not fear for herself, but fear for what might happen if she stayed silent. "You were pre-med?" His voice carried disbelief mixed with growing uncertainty. For 3 years, he'd seen her as part of the cafe's comfortable routine, a friendly face who remembered his order and never intruded on his private grief. The idea that she possessed scientific knowledge relevant to his life's work seemed impossible. Yet her use of his name and her obvious familiarity with the molecular structures suggested otherwise. Keisha nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her cleaning supplies. Dr. Martinez's biochemistry class, fall semester 2016. We studied protein synthesis pathways for autoimmune treatment research. There was one particular compound. She paused, gathering courage for words that could destroy a man's dreams or save countless lives. The initial trials showed remarkable results. Patients with lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. Within weeks, their symptoms improved dramatically. But the long-term studies revealed metabolic cascading failures, progressive organ damage that didn't show up until months later. James felt his chest tighten. Elena had died from complications of lupus, her body slowly betraying her despite every treatment available. The technology he was about to license promised hope for patients facing similar battles. Meridian had presented extensive trial data showing significant improvement in autoimmune symptoms with minimal side effects. 3 years of negotiations, hundreds of hours of due diligence, and teams of experts had validated every aspect of this deal. The research was eventually abandoned, Keisha continued, her voice growing stronger with urgency. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well initially, masking the fact that it was essentially poisoning patients slowly. 23 people died in the extended trials before the compound was permanently shelved. The words hit James like physical blows. He thought about Elena's final months, how she'd fought so hard for every day, how she'd made him promise to use whatever success he achieved to help others avoid her suffering. If Keisha was right, if this technology carried hidden dangers, then the foundation bearing Elena's name would become exactly what she'd feared most. A system that gave false hope before causing irreversible harm. "Why are you telling me this?" James asked quietly. "Why risk your job, risk challenging something this big, for a customer you barely know?" Keisha's eyes filled with unexpected tears. "Because I've watched you visit your wife's grave every Sunday for 2 years. Because I know how much this foundation means to you, how you're trying to honor her memory. Because 23 families trusted scientists and pharmaceutical companies and lawyers, too, and their loved ones died anyway." She took a shaky breath. Because sometimes the most important knowledge comes from people who couldn't afford to finish using it. The cafe continued its normal rhythm around them, customers laughing and chatting, unaware that a conversation at table 7 might prevent a tragedy. James looked at the molecular diagrams that had filled him with such hope just minutes earlier, and for the first time, he saw not the solution to his wife's dream, but the potential for a nightmare that would haunt him forever. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. Time was running short, and the truth was more complicated than either of them could have imagined. James Fletcher made the most difficult decision of his business career in a downtown cafe over cooling coffee and the quiet wisdom of a woman whose dreams had been derailed by life's cruel timing. He pulled out his phone and dialed his chief technology officer, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. "Michael, I need you to pull all the original research." Sterling's voice turned sharp. "James, we've been through every aspect of this deal. You're getting cold feet over $120 million decision now." Not cold feet. Due diligence that might have been incomplete. The silence stretched before Sterling's tone shifted to something calculating. "What exactly are you questioning? Because if you're trying to renegotiate terms at the last minute, that's not how business works." James looked at Keisha, who was listening with obvious anxiety. Her willingness to risk everything to speak truth reminded him of Elena, who'd fought for patients' rights up until her final days. "I'm questioning whether this technology has long-term safety issues that weren't disclosed. I'm questioning whether 23 patients died during research phases that your company conveniently forgot to mention." The silence this time was dangerous. "I don't know where you're getting your information, James, but I'd be very careful about making accusations like that. And I have a technology team that takes patient safety seriously. The signing is postponed until we complete our own independent analysis." James ended the call and immediately contacted his lawyer. Within minutes, Teams of investigators were pulling research databases, contacting former Meridian researchers, and examining sealed patent filings. The evidence Keisha had pointed toward began emerging within an hour. Buried studies, discontinued trials, and devastating long-term consequences. By noon, James had enough confirmation to know that Keisha had saved him from the greatest mistake of his life. The protein synthesis technology carried exactly the risks she'd described, and Meridian had systematically hidden every warning sign. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. At 12:30, James looked across the cafe at the woman who'd prevented him from betraying his wife's memory. Keisha was serving lunch to other customers, moving with quiet dignity. Her intervention had been built on knowledge that could have remained buried forever. 3 months later, James Fletcher stood in the conference room of Elena Fletcher Memorial Research Foundation, but the signing ceremony happening today looked nothing like the one that had been planned. Instead of licensing dangerous technology, he was announcing a $50 million grant program for independent autoimmune research, with special funding for researchers whose educational journeys had been interrupted by financial circumstances. Keisha Washington sat in the front row, wearing the cap and gown she'd thought she'd never get to put on again. James had quietly arranged for her to complete her final year of pre-medical studies through an accelerated program, with full tuition coverage and a stipend that allowed her to support her mother and daughter while focusing on her education. The investigation into Meridian's hidden research had uncovered a pattern of deception spanning multiple drugs and dozens of buried safety studies. Sterling's company faced federal criminal charges, and 23 families finally had answers about why their loved ones had died. James's decision to postpone the signing ceremony had prevented hundreds of additional deaths. When my wife Elena was dying, James told the gathered researchers and medical students, she made me promise to use whatever success I achieved to help others facing similar battles. I thought it meant making deals and moving fast to bring new treatments to market. He paused, looking at Keisha with gratitude that words couldn't express. But Elena would have wanted me to listen to wisdom wherever it came from, especially from someone brave enough to risk everything to protect people she'd never met. The foundation would now focus on rigorous, independent research with complete transparency. Former patients and families would serve on review boards. Researchers like Keisha, who combined scientific knowledge with real-world understanding, would lead projects designed to heal rather than simply profit. After the ceremony, James and Keisha walked together toward the memorial garden where Elena's grave was marked by white roses. The same groundskeeper was there, tending to flower beds that had become a place of hope rather than mourning. I still can't believe you recognized those molecular structures after 7 years away from chemistry, James said quietly. Keisha smiled, touching one of Elena's roses. Some knowledge stays with you because it matters. I may have left medical school, but I never stopped caring about patients. As they stood together in the garden where grief had been transformed into purpose, James realized that his wife's greatest gift hadn't been the fortune that funded research, but the wisdom to recognize that healing comes through human connections and the courage to listen when truth comes from unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things.